and we are going to start with Bre McGee, Uncommon Collaborative. She's going to talk about photography and inclusion, capturing great photos of every family. So we are going to have a presentation by Bre. Bre is a brand. She is known as uncommoncollaborative.com. She's a pet photographer. The Dog Photog, the Dog Photog, got it, mn.com. And her photographic style has largely been influenced by her photojournalistic roots and holds a strong emphasis on non-intrusive, authentic storytelling. She has worked with brands of all sizes and industries, but specializes in product and service brands, creating imagery that pulls back the curtain and showcases the people, products, and processes that make each business unique. In the spring of 2021, her 4-month-old puppy, Fraser, needed heart surgery, and Bre held a Pup Portrait fundraiser that went on to raise over $5,000 in one day, covering Fraser's surgery. She quickly fell in love with photographing pets in a dramatic studio setting and launched her second photo brand, the Dog Photog, 6 months after the fundraiser. Bre loves spending time outdoors, whether camping or hiking through the woods or strolling through her northeast Minneapolis neighborhood, especially with her husband and 2 dogs, Sequoia, who's a black lab pit bull mix, and Fraser, a Westie. She loves home improvement projects, gardening, road trips, and perfectly crafted hazelnut lattes.
Well, I'm glad this worked out, that I was here early, ready to go. I am very excited to talk about diversity and photography and the importance of inclusion in photography. While it might not seem like as big of an issue, I can assure you that if you're in one of these marginalized communities where photography just doesn't always capture your skin tones properly, you know, maybe the white friend is exposed properly and somebody with a darker skin, you don't always see as clearly in the photo, and you see this a lot in cell phone photography. So today we're going to talk about how we can capture really great photos of every family, specifically when you're capturing the first family photo with the new adoption, just so that you can really highlight all of the people that come to the rescue, all of the different communities you serve, and really continue to expand and create a really amazing experience for these families that are coming to your rescue. Because as we know, people have a good experience, they're going to tell other friends. So let's get started. So we're going to talk about 3 big things today. So the importance of clean, clear photos, the best practices, including ones you can implement right away today, and then how you can take it a step further if you're looking to invest a little bit. So who am I? I'm Bre. I am a brand photographer, which with Uncommon Collaborative, I highlight the people, processes, and products behind a brand that make them unique in order to build trust with their consumers before they ever make a connection, as well as a pet photographer. So through the Dog Photog, but I promise, photograph cats too. It just doesn't rhyme as nicely as Dog Photog. And I am based in Minneapolis. So first, we're going to cover the importance of high quality photos. This includes imagery that is going to last a literal lifetime for these families. So why is it important for you as a rescue? First thing, quality imagery establishes a trust between the rescue and the consumers that are following it. You know, there's kind of a saying that the quality of a brand is as equal to the quality of the images. So if you have low quality photos, unfortunately, it's kind of subconsciously connected that low quality photos equal a low quality brand, which is not always the case. And these are some simple little changes that you can make to enhance the quality of the photos. But specifically in talking about diversity, it also helps bridge an inclusion gap so that you're highlighting lots of different skin tones in a correct exposure. So we'll go through some of those pieces, but it also gives prospects a better idea of what it's like working with you. You know, you're seeing these bright smiley faces, seeing people having a good experience. That is more people that are wanting to come and adopt through you. And additionally, this photo is important. You know, you want to make sure that this end of the long process, especially if folks have, you know, put a name in to adopt one cat and they didn't because, you know, they unfortunately didn't get that cat, looking at another one. You want to keep the focus on the happiness and the joy, and not seeing a low quality photo, grainy, underexposed, color quality being off because of different lighting. So those are just some things specifically for the rescue. But when you're thinking about the family that's adopting, you also have to consider that this is their first family photo. Like, this is a big, big deal. You know, this is going to be what's shared on social media, what they're showing their friends and family, that they got this new cat and they're so excited. And that will have a reflection on your rescue. And this is an important way to easily enhance that experience and what is being reflected to other people who didn't have a direct experience with you. And this is one of the last impressions that they will have of your rescue and the experience and the process of working with you. So let's make it a really good one. So diving in, here are the practices that we can start right away today. See, I told you, I like kitties too. So dividing these practices into a few different ways. One, we're going to talk about diffused light, proper exposure, and post-production, so editing. And you will be getting a copy of this this presentation. So there are a couple links that should be helpful for you. But so talking about diffused light, here's my lab pit. Here's Sequoia. We went down to the park a few weeks ago to get some imagery to showcase on a cell phone. Here's what we're talking about when we talk about diffused light. Ideally, when you're using a cell phone, some of the best options for lighting is just going to be natural light. So outside. If you can't go outside, or it's not really a great location, it's raining, get as close to a window as possible. Have your subjects face the window. So if you're the one taking the photo, your back should be against the window. This will add a nice natural light to their faces, brighten them up nicely. Even if it's not super bright out, you know, aside from it being in the evening, you should be able to get some nice light. If you do go outside, try to aim to have a nice, even light across all the people in the photo, which means if it's sunny, make sure everyone's faces are in the shade, so that you don't have one person with a bright sunbeam and somebody else with a shadow. It just makes it harder to even things out when we get to the post-production phase. It's always easiest to get a nice photo to start with and then make subtle enhancements later to just polish it up. So talking diffused light, this is what I mean. Here's a great example. You can see the sky above the trees is very overcast. To the left side on the trees, you can see kind of some sun poking through. So we want to aim for the diffused light. You don't see a lot of different types of lighting on Sequoia's face. You can see all of her details. You know, some of those dark shadows under her chest are starting to pop up. But overall, it's a nice mid-tony type photo. Mid-tony meaning there's not a lot of highlights, not very bright highlights, not deep dark shadows. So it's a really nice in between. This is an easy photo to make some really nice edit adjustments with. So then again, talking about proper exposure, you want to consider the faces. That's going to be the biggest piece. So the image on the left is a bit underexposed. So you're losing a lot of the detail in her chest, in her mouth. It's just kind of this pink tongue splotch. If she didn't have any light reflecting off of her eyes, all of that would get lost too. So when you're looking at exposure, specifically on a smartphone, where you touch on the screen, as many of you know, so I apologize if this is a little elementary for you. Where you touch on the screen is how you're going to adjust your exposure. Specifically with iPhones, you can lock your exposure by holding on the screen, and then there's a little like a little icon to the left of this square that is your focus, and you can pull that up or down to adjust your exposure. So if you lock it and then you kind of scroll tap this little icon up, it's going to brighten it. If you pull it down, it will darken it, and that's where you can get a nice middle ground, because auto exposures are only go so much. You know, they do their best, but you're the human, you can control the machine. And this exposure piece is important, considering that this is a diversity conference. We won't get too deep into the weeds with this, but with cameras and their sensors, the sensor being the piece of the camera that lets the light in to decide the exposure. There are some racist beginnings when you're considering camera sensors and technology in the early days of photography. You know, considering who the people were that were creating cameras, creating these sensors, who had access to the money and the technology to be able to make adjustments, these were a lot of white people. So when they were creating these cameras, they focused on their subjects being white. So that will, you know, you look at a lot of cameras now. Google actually just announced last year that they are making big strides in creating a better sensor to better photograph people of color, just to create a better inclusion amongst people, you know, everywhere. Taking a selfie shouldn't be dependent upon your race. So thinking about that mid-tone range that I had been mentioning on that last slide, mid-tone avoids the blown out highlights. That's where you lose all the detail in like the bright areas of your photo. A lot of those will turn white if they're blown out. And then avoiding the shadow voids as well. So those deep dark blacks that you can't see any detail. If it's not photographed to begin with, meaning if it's blown out or it's too shadowy, it's very difficult to pull those back into the photo in post-production. And here we are, post-production. I always suggest people take more than one photo. It's always better to have extras and not need them than to be struggling with one photo that's not quite in focus, or you wish you had a different option, or always take more. I also suggest to avoid filters. Opt for something called presets. I highly suggest downloading an app called Adobe Lightroom Photo and Video Editor. This is a free app, and it's a very, it's from Adobe, so the same people that make it, Photoshop and Lightroom. These are two programs that I use daily. That, you know, when you're going for a full software on a desktop, it is a lot more in depth. But this app, which we'll go through on the next slide, is really, really user friendly. You can make some trials and errors and play around a little bit. But just to give you kind of how I would approach it, I start with using a recommended preset. So when you're in Lightroom Photo and Video Editor, they have an option for presets, for manual editing. Pop into the presets first, and then it showcases a few different recommended ones. So it reads the photo and decides, here's what we think you should use first. So the presets rarely get the photo perfect. I like to think of it as like maybe a 75% head start, and then you can go through and refine it based on what that preset is lacking. So this includes adjusting the white balance subtly, highlights and shadows, saturation, vibrance, so that it might really pops, detail. So when you're in that app, click on the detail, click on noise reduction. That helps pull down that graininess. So if there was not a lot of light, you'll likely have a fair amount of noise or grain, which is just, it naturally gives the photo kind of a lower quality, unless that's a specific brand aesthetic. But because these are just going to be some quick family photos, typically you aren't going to want a lot of noise. And then under optics, there's two check boxes, and that just adjusts for the lens of your phone. So every lens has a slight bend based on the type of lens. It just impacts the photo subtly, so that instead of seeing it how your eye would naturally see it, it just needs some lens correction, if that makes sense. So you'll notice a slight change. So we'll just kind of toggle back and forth. So here's an unedited photo of Sequoia, looking all happy, waiting to have her ball thrown. And then there's the edited version. So very subtle, but you can see the white balance in the original photo. It's cool. It's not, you know, it changes the vibe of the photo. And then here is the warmer option that balances the cools of the original photo. This feels like much more of a photo that was how the environment felt when we took the photo. You'll also notice the highlights and the shadows in the trees behind her. It brightens the whole space. Her tongue's brighter, the catch lights in her eyes are brighter. Whoops, not quite there yet. The shadows in the trees add some depth to it. I enhance the saturation and vibrance to make it pop, to draw you in. It adds a warmth to the photo. You'll see not a ton of noise reduction because it was a fairly bright, cloudy day, but you will see the subtle lens shift. You see how it just kind of pops a teeny bit. I know it's kind of tricky when you see the shadow and the color shift, but you can see like right around her tongue and her eyes, there's a subtle enhancement. And that's kind of what I'm talking about very subtle changes that just really enhance the photo. So if you want to take it a step further and just invest a little bit, you can really enhance your photos and really create some great memories for your families. So first, lighting. This is naturally a big piece. If you don't have access to an outdoor space or big windows, a ring light is going to be a really easy way and affordable way to step up the quality of your photos. There's a few things I would suggest keeping in mind instead of just going online to buy any ring light. So biggest thing I suggest is adjustable color temperature. This is the white balance that we were talking about. So in this example, you can see the brightness or the color tone of the 3000 Kelvin light, which is just a color temperature scale in photography versus the 6000 Kelvin. So 6000 Kelvin is fairly close to natural daylight, which is about 5600 Kelvin. So this is going to be an important way to adjust the color of the lighting to either match the window lights that's coming into your space, match any other overhead light in your space, just warming up skin tone so that it doesn't feel such a harsh, cool light that looks cool or too cool, and not cool in a good way. If this is making sense. We have time for questions, so this piece can get a little confusing. I also suggest getting a dimmable option so that you don't have to physically move the light back and forth. You can just rotate a switch and keep it in one place. Additionally, they have an option where there's an AC plug-in. It can run off of wall power, but also a battery option, which is great if you want to take it outside and have a little extra opportunity with the light rather than just needing to be attached to a wall outlet. And also you want to be looking at a light that has at least 400 or more LED beads. This just makes it brighter. It gives you more opportunity. The light can be further away from your subject, which also helps with folks being able to keep their eyes a little more open because you have a bright light in your face, it hurts your eyes. You want to close them. So to be able to have a light further away, have the light be not so aggressive and cool, but warming it up makes it easier for folks to keep their eyes open, and it just feels more comfortable. I would buy this one, is a clickable link. So if you want to take a look, it's a quick light on Amazon for about $100. So it is a little bit more, but it does check all of these boxes. And then looking at your camera. So looking at a smartphone as what we're talking about, this is the interface of the Lightroom photo editor and video editor. While it might look a little intense, they break down the menu based on some of these things we talked about. So you got your light, color, effects, detail is where you're going to find the grain reduction, optics adjusts for camera lens correction. It gives you a lot of freedom to play around with it. So I would really suggest downloading this. The best option for your camera is going to be a newer model smartphone. A lot of smartphones are just solid cameras all the way around. But if you get one within the last 3 years, and no shame, my phone is like 5+ years old and it still takes great photos. So don't feel like you have to run out and upgrade your phone. But if this is really important to you, I would look at one within the last 3 years. And this would be a great option if you had the means to have a phone specifically sitting at your desk that's near where folks are taking their first family photo picture. And this is just a dedicated phone. Maybe it's even, doesn't have a SIM card or a plan to it, but just accesses social media from Wi-Fi. Just using it as a separate little camera computer to be able to post on social media. So I would also, in Lightroom on that camera, save certain presets. You can learn what types of edits you're making fairly regularly to a lot of these photos. You can save those presets and editing can go even faster. And on top of that, you can text these images to the families immediately, and having really clean photos and then immediate text message, maybe it's like 5 minutes after they drive away, and just this excitement is still building, and just thinking about how these small details can really enhance a family's experience with you. And action. So the last one, talking about the, what other steps you can take. So as we talked about, cell phone, a recent cell phone, download that app. There's plenty of other apps, but I think this one is a really great one to get you started, and that you can also grow into. But make sure you practice. Practice, of course, makes perfect. So download photos from the internet, play around with them, take your own photos. I have a feeling most of you have a pet at home, a cat at home. Take pictures, play around with it. Ask friends or a spouse to model with the cat or a different pet and play around. Go outside, go inside, kind of see the boundaries that your phone gives you. At the same time, make sure you're also looking at it on a bigger screen. It's one thing I didn't include in the presentation, but sending your photo to your laptop or your computer to look at it larger scale gives you a better idea of kind of the grain we talked about. The overall sharpness, so that people's faces are really nice and sharp and in focus. And just, you would have to imagine that most people, if they're going to print their first family photo, are not going to print it, the same size as your cell phone screen. And additionally, you can talk with the rest of your team about the importance of the inclusion through photography to make sure that folks feel like your rescue really cares about the next step in diversity practices, and that you're going even the step further to think about how photography impacts people and impacts the families within your rescue, the people you work with. And it all comes down to you create an experience that people feel valued and feel important and feel like somebody that matters to your rescue. They are going to tell their friends and family and highly suggest that they work with you. Try to not get too nitty gritty, because we can go very deep into the woods. So.
Question: what did you say for the phone beside Lightroom? Somebody was asking for some clarifications on that.
Can you clarify the question a little bit? This one that you're talking about, or just any kind of
save presets in Lightroom?
Oh, yeah.
What did you say?
The presets? Yeah. So let's see if I can find. Yes. So the presets. Actually, I'll see if I can even pull it up quick. So it's actually pretty straightforward. Once you're in the app, you'll be able to see it. Yeah, let me just pull one up since we've got a little time. Okay, so you probably can't actually see this, but here's Sequoia again. And then under here, right, that circle, 2 circles, it says presets. And then you click into that and it analyzes your photo and tells you, here's the different presets we think you should use. As you can tell, some of them aren't super great. So you find one that is like a good starting point, like that one, maybe a good starting point, and then you can make adjustments from there.
So it isn't 2 apps, it's Lightroom, photo, and video editor in the same app.
It's all in one. Yep.
Oh, got
yep.
you. All right, excellent. What is the best color background to use to highlight black cats?
Anything but black. Realistically, a white is always nice just because it really pops, but unless you're lighting it with extra lights, white can very easily turn out gray. So like when I am photographing pets on white, I have to light the backdrop separately and then additional lights on the animal. So like, where's this other kitty cat? So yeah, blackish cat, black backdrop, and I had to have a light coming in. I don't know if you can see my mouse on that,
Yep.
but I had a light going over the backdrop behind her, so she would pop out, and then a couple lights coming in from the side as well. So if you get a couple ring lights, you could totally play around. And as much as the cat will allow, I do have to say that there's a difference between cats and dogs when it comes to photographing them. But yeah, I would honestly, any kind of a color. I always love to see an eye color for the cat, and then you can play around like with this one, the same cat, but she looks totally different based on the bright blue backdrop, pulling in the blues in from her green eyes. So yeah, I hope that helps. Yeah, I would probably go with blue or white or it's up to you. Even a brand color of what your rescue looks like. Try that. Subtle brand awareness is always good.
Yep. Okay. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, one of the comments just disappeared, so I assume that the question was answered out there. Cool. Excellent. Yeah, I think that that's the most of the questions that we have for today. I did notice that you have signed up for the online Cat Conference Facebook group. So if people have extra questions, thank you for doing that. People have extra questions.
Absolutely. And feel free to message me on social too. I'm happy to help. Or if you have befores and afters, send me your before and after, as I'd love to see the progress you're making. And then if you wanted, I could also take a stab at editing your original and seeing kind of how I would edit it to give you some examples. Yeah, totally happy to help along the way. So
excellent. One last question for you. So we're talking stills here. What about video?
What about video? Just I mean the family and the cats, just cats.
Sort of tips and tricks, or so how does video live in your world as like a sort of a still photographer? I mean, do you feel that video is equally important to the stills, or should we focus on just the high quality stills? I feel like we are just going in 80 different directions. And
oh my gosh, you're not wrong.
Where should we focus our time?
Well, I hate this answer, but it depends. So I think the biggest thing is thinking about the overall use. What are you intending to do with this video? So if you're looking at making videos for TikTok or Reels on Instagram, when you're doing video, hold your camera vertical. For a very long time, when it was just YouTube with videos, we were all taught hold the camera horizontal, and now it's switching back to vertical. So thinking about that would be a first step. These same principles apply when it comes to lighting and getting more footage or content than you actually need. But from a social media standpoint, the video is definitely where it's heading. And you have adorable subjects. Getting just adorable photos of cats doing cute things will get people paying attention. And using like the trending audio on Instagram or TikTok. And that's an easy way to help connect with your audience in a way that's super authentic. They're seeing the personalities of these cats, seeing what might jive with them and their family, and gives you a chance to really show the personality of your rescue, and not just as, oh, we're a rescue, we have cats, but as a broader space within the community.
Sounds good. Excellent. That's great. I personally, I mean, even though everybody's like, oh, it's so easy, just use your phone and all that other stuff, I get very overwhelmed by all the visual stuff. Thus, that's why I
Hmm.
guess I don't play a big role in it, but I feel like it can be a lot of a lot of time, and you never feel like it's just right. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing to consider is that it takes time. So if you're starting photos and you're starting to play around with the editing, like be kind to yourself. Like I've been doing this professionally for over 10 years, and cell phone editing is still hard for me because I don't do it enough. Most of my stuff I edit on my computer and I take with, my professional grade cameras. So it takes time. Be kind to yourself and just practice and, have fun. Have fun
Yeah.
with it.